guys? Aaron from PhoneDog.com here, and I'm here with an epic dogfight, just of epic proportions. One, I have the Samsung Galaxy S2, and I have the Samsung Infuse 4G, and they're both awesome. What? Oh, it's not Sean Connery Appreciation Day? It's next Monday. That's embarrassing. What's going on, guys? I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com. In that case, I'm here with two awesome Samsung devices, the Galaxy S2 and the Samsung Infuse 4G. This one's not available in the US just yet. It's coming hopefully in the summer to some of the carriers, but the Infuse 4G is available with AT&T. Dual core over here, single core over here, but both have awesome specs. This one's a little bit cheaper, whereas the Galaxy S2 is pretty expensive. Which one's the one to have? We're going to figure it out more in the dogfight, but first, special thanks to our friends at Best Buy. They've hooked us up with a couple of smartphones that we're giving you in the One Paw Bandit game, so when you go into Best Buy Mobile to buy a device, you walk out working. You get your browser set up, your email set up, and more, so you're taken care of when you walk out the door. But enough of that, let's get into the review. Samsung Galaxy S2, Samsung Infuse 4G epic dogfight starts right now. You know, it's like my grandmother always used to say, when you have two phones that look similar, you have to do a dogfight. That's really not what she said, but you know, it sounded good at the time. Here they are, Samsung Galaxy S2, not available in the US just yet, but coming hopefully in the summer. Galaxy S2 can be purchased online at specialty retailers like Expansis USA and some of those for around $750 to $800, so it's a pretty expensive device. In contrast, you have the Infuse 4G, which while they look exactly the same, or similar at least, this one is spec'd a little bit differently. It's available at AT&T for $199.99, and it joins their lineup with the Infuse, the Inspire, or well, this is the Infuse, excuse me, the Inspire, the Atrix, the iPhone 4, and some other high-end smartphones. Now, specs-wise, Galaxy S2, they look, like I said, almost exactly the same, and it's funny, the Galaxy S2 is the older device. This was announced in February. This one just came out this month in the States, but you'll see how similar they look on the back. So you have 8 megapixel camera on both of these, a little bit different frame around the camera, a little bit different battery door, but both texturized, and then both have that boxy look and feel to them. Very svelte, very sexy. 8.49 millimeters thick, 8.99 millimeters thick, so not a lot of thickness difference between the two. But over here you have a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core Exynos processor, 4.3-inch Super AMOLED Plus display, 8 megapixel camera, front-facing camera, Android 2.3 with TouchWiz 4.0. Now over here, hardware-wise, a little bit slower, 1.2 gigahertz single-core Hummingbird processor, 4.5-inch display though, so you do have a bigger display and you can really see that when you hold them up side by side. I've been wanting to do this dogfight for a couple of days now because the similarities, but the differences between TouchWiz 3.0, 4.0, you know, Samsung old versus Samsung new, it's pretty interesting. So anyway, 4.5-inch Super AMOLED Plus display, 8 megapixel camera, front-facing sucker on this one as well. But you have your 4 capacitive buttons down here, whereas this is the European look. You have your menu, back, and then you have your physical home button. Now, physical home button, kind of similar to somebody else on the market. But over on the left side, you have your volume rocker, micro USB charging port on the bottom, power button over here, typical Samsung style, power button on the right side, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack up there on the top, your camera on the back, and then your speaker down here at the bottom. So very traditional Samsung with the hump down here at the bottom. Let me pull that out so you can see. Hump on the bottom, very, very thin, and looks good. Then you have this one very similar as well. Chrome sides, which actually it took them a while to grow on me. The chrome sides, probably going to be a love-hate thing, but it's a very kind of a silvery chrome, and it matches the battery door, but you may or may not like it. The volume rocker on the left side, power button on the right, micro USB charging port on the bottom. So the design's exactly the same, but a little bit thicker over here and a little bit different in terms of color schemes. So some slight differences, 8.99 millimeters thick, so just under 9 millimeters thick, so still very thin, has that hump at the bottom as well. So 1650 milliamp batteries on both of these devices, so you know, you would think with the smaller display over here the battery life would last a little bit longer than the one with the 4.5-inch display. You know, I have gotten some great battery life out of the Galaxy S2, but I didn't really notice a huge difference between this one and the Samsung Infuse. Both seem to be pretty decent in the battery life department. Actually, one of the better Android devices I've worked with. Now, the downside to all Samsung devices, they take forever to charge. Forever. So if you forget to charge it one night and you're rushing out to a meeting and you want to charge it in the kitchen for 15 minutes before you go to work, it's not going to work on the Samsung devices because 15 minutes really equals about 3% of a charge on a Samsung device, whereas you charge it something like an iPhone for 15 minutes, you're going to get about 20% or 25%. So just something to keep in mind, these devices charge exceptionally slow.
but you know, it's a trade-off. So here we go. You know, Android 2.2 over here, Android 2.3 over here. So newer version of Android. You can see it in the icons up at the top. Let me get up here so you can get a comparison. Android 2.3 on the Galaxy S2, whereas it's 2.2. So just some improvements you can see to the signal strength indicator. The battery life meter is different, but otherwise pretty similar. And you'll see that the color schemes are slightly different as well. And then the icons have changed. And one thing they go away from on TouchWiz 4.0, whereas it's still there on 3.0. They made some significant improvements, really, in my opinion, is between TouchWiz 3.0 and 4.0. Tremendous strides in 4.0, much better looking overlay. It looks less cheap to me, and we'll start in the menu just so you can see how different they look. Now, if you think this looks familiar, well, it looks very much like iOS to me. It has those boxy icons. It has the noticeable dock down here at the bottom. And they've changed that in TouchWiz 4.0. It just looks better. It's cleaner, and you can see that the background shows in the back, whereas this is totally black back here. So you can see the dock's gone. The 4 icons are still there, but the dock's gone. And then when I scroll through, you'll notice that the boxes are no longer around the icon. So it just looks better. It looks cleaner and more up-to-date to me as opposed to this. So that's some minor changes that you'll see. And let's go into widgets as well just to show you. You'll notice that over here, actually I'm going to flip these around so you can see. Over here, typical Android looking add to home screen menu with all your different things down here, widgets, shortcuts, folders, wallpapers. And then over here you see this kind of fluid, nice looking interface where it brings it up at the bottom, kind of nicely pops it up out of the bottom, and I can still scroll through my various home screens while I'm looking for widgets. So click on widgets just to show you the difference, and it'll bring up another menu of widgets, whereas this brings them up down here. So I can scroll through, and you can just see how fluid it is as a result of that processor. Having that dual-core processor, tremendous benefit, and you can see when you slide through how the icons kind of slide like album art that you would see in some of the music players. So if I push it really hard, as you can see, they slide from left to right, and they kind of inch themselves up, whereas with this, it's just kind of a plain Jane menu-looking interface. Nothing exciting there. So I can scroll through, and then I can go to analog dual clock, for example, and we'll select city, Miami. I can move it around, move it from one screen to the other, and I'm still down here. So I could just theoretically keep adding widgets over and over again if I wanted to, if they were small enough. So then to jump into messaging, you can see the differences here as well. The interface looks different. You can see that it's a little bit different in terms of the boxes and the way you enter your message. This has more of a polished look to it as opposed to TouchWiz 3.0. So we'll jump in here and take a look first at the Infuse. You can see a couple of different keyboard options. It comes with Swipe, Android keyboard, and Samsung keyboard out of the box. Gingerbread is something I've pre-installed. It's available in the Android market, or I installed after the fact rather. It's available in the Android market. There's a free version and a paid version. And then over here, you have 2 different options that come with it. I've installed SwiftKey and Gingerbread. So the 2 out of the box that you get, Samsung keypad and Swipe. So Samsung keypad, it is an improvement over the Samsung keypad on something like this. You can see the differences as to how the keyboards look. Now, one thing I like, I'm president of the Fat Finger Club, honorary chairperson. Having that larger display is a huge benefit for me, but there is a noticeable size difference. So we'll put them over top so you can see just how they look in terms of size differences. But that's how the Samsung keypad looks. You can use it in portrait or in landscape. Let me turn on auto rotation so you can see. And even with a 4.3-inch display, though it's a little bit smaller than the Infuse, it's still relatively easy to use. The Quick Brown Fox. Oh, the Sick Brown Fox. Well, that's the Sick Brown Fox went to the park. Went to the park. Because sick doesn't mean sick anymore. Sick means awesome. So he is sick nasty, as they like to call it. Sick. Sick. That's a cool word, right? Sick. The sick, and when I say sick, I should put parentheses, awesome. The Sick Brown Fox went to the park. Yo. Sick Brown Fox went to the park, yo, and that was supposed to be a comma, but I was looking through the viewfinder and didn't see. Anyway, so you have that. You have the Swipe keyboard as well, if you prefer using Swipe. Now over here you have 3 out of the box, like I said, Android keyboard, Samsung, and Swipe. I don't care for the Samsung keyboard because the autocorrect is just very off to me. Even on the revised version, they've made some improvements, but it's still not the best in the world. It's not up to date. I feel like it doesn't correct very well. Now here, let's say Oklahoma. K-L-A-H. I must have turned. Okay, so I didn't turn it off. So there you see how it auto-corrected that. It works well in most cases, but when you come across that rare word that you don't want it to be, or you want to type, but it doesn't want to type it, you run into issues. So you can see here the Quick Brown Focus is going to skew. So that's my terrible typing. The quick town focus is going to school. So you can really see the difference. We're going to turn on screen rotation because you can see the difference even in that little bit of difference between these screen sizes, how big it is to have a 4.5-inch display in landscape mode. I mean, that's a big keyboard. That's almost tablet sized. So it looks, it's very easy to use, and for people with large fingers, this might be the route that they want to take. Now, one thing, TouchWiz 3.0 has no customizations. When you get into like a text message log, you have those typical bubbles like you see from iOS, and here actually I'll get into one so I can show you. I have to pull these away because I've been using these as my personal devices. Let's see if we can go into 101 here. Let's see, for example, here you go. So you have this little text box stuff like iOS where I pop up a response, hello. So you can see it looks just like that. There's no customization available though. So you customize, that's the extent of the customization. That's all you get. Now my question was, with Samsung, why didn't you ever make customization? When in TouchWiz 4.0, they made some customization choices. And forgive me, I'm going to back out here so I can show you this. You have not only the ability to change the message skin, but you can change the font size as well. So change the message skin. So we'll go up here and we'll look at mono, for example. That's what it's on currently. I can change it to Joy Pop. You can just see some of the different options available. This is what it comes with out of the box. By default, blue, brown, evergreen, mono, and then Joy Pop, so I can change it. And forgive me again, I can change the size, change the fonts, change whatever, and it pops up in that customized font. So just nice to have some customization choices in the messaging, in the wallpapers, and more. And I'll show you some of the new wallpapers that you get out of the box. Nothing too exciting, but you can see they're all wallpapers that really make that Super AMOLED Plus display pop, and then you go back to your typical Android wallpapers. Browsers on both of these devices. Now keep in mind, Android 2.2, Android 2.3 over here, but both of these are running on AT&T, so it'll be particularly interesting to see which ones pop up first. Now let's go to PhoneDog.com. We're going to load up PhoneDog over here. .com, and we'll wait for those to load. Now AT&T coverage isn't the best in my home office, so it may take a little bit, but that one seems to be loading relatively quickly. Now one thing I like about this device, like I said, it's unlocked and unbranded, so it's not an AT&T device. And what I like about it is you can see up at the top, both of these have H+ icons. Let me wait for that to focus in. H+ on both of those. Now the difference is this one will stay on, because it's an AT&T branded device, they have it staying on H+. So even if you're in a non-HSPA Plus area, like a 3G cell site, something like that, it still displays H+, whereas this one will flip back and forth between 3G and H+. So you really know where when you're in one of those areas where it's faster or in one of those areas where it's slower. So just a little bit more truthful, as opposed to going with a branded AT&T device. So here they are, pages are loaded, this one's finished, this one's about to be done. We'll wait for it to finish so we have a fair test. And you can see, take a look at some of the windows to see if there's any difference there. It doesn't look to be a huge difference. You can see some minor things, no gray bar behind the new window, there's no text over here, it's just a plus, but mostly similar. And go back here and see that the menus look exactly the same. Now the difference is they have this black color scheme going on over here where it's white, which is interesting because Super AMOLED Plus obviously responds better from a battery life perspective to darker colors. So it works better from a battery life standpoint to go with darker colors. So it's interesting that they didn't incorporate that in Android 2.2. And you see it all throughout the system from the notifications bar. You see that one's a little bit less gray and more. So let's do some pinch to zoom tests, and you can see just how responsive this actually is. I mean, very, very responsive, very clean. Bam. We'll zoom in, zoom out just so you can see, do some quick tests. You can see how quickly it migrates from portrait to landscape mode, back and forth. And so very pleased on that front. A little bit of checkerboarding over there, but nothing too crazy. And you can see over here, pinch to zoom, very fast as well. The difference is, see some checkerboarding there as well, but you can see it. Whereas over here, it just seems a little bit more fluid. It's one of those things you're going to have to play with both. Try to get your hands on both to really see, but it's just more fluid over here. This one's just ever so slightly more choppy, but still good. So on the browser front, I have to give it by narrow edge to the the Samsung Galaxy S2, but the Infuse 4G is definitely good as well. Sorry about T-Mobile phone overload going on this week.